So, if you have your Bibles open to Romans chapter 12, my goodness, if you hadn't learned this by now, one thing I hope you've learned is that the spiritual gifts are listed in Romans chapter 12, you know. In Romans chapter 12, this week we're going to talk about the gift of giving, which is an interesting gift. I think it's a wonderful gift. And I'm no doubt there are people in this room who have this gift. So we've gone through all the different gifts: prophecy, service, teaching, exhortation. And then today we want to talk about giving, and then we only have two left: administration or leading, and mercy. So we're really, trekking through this with these gifts, and I pray that if you still haven't discovered what it is, the one that you have or the two that you have or whatnot, I want you to be asking God. Say, God, you said you gave us all one of them. I need you to show me what my gift is. So this week we want to talk about the gift of giving. Now, the subtitle for this is this: meeting the needs of ministry using the resources to advance kingdom causes. So, meeting the needs of ministry, using resources to advance kingdom causes. So, there really is a gift for this, all right? Look in Romans chapter 12, look at verse number 8. So, it says, he that exhorts, wait on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. So, he mentions the gift of giving there. And then hop down to verse number 13. As he speaks about giving, he said, distributing to the necessity of saints and be given to hospitality. So, he gives two requirements for those that have the gift of giving there, and it involves distributing to the saints and being given to hospitality. And we're going to talk about in just a second that that's two really totally different things, but I love that he goes into that detail. Here is something that Tom Rush said about the gift of giving. He said it enables one to contribute joyfully and often in abundance to God's work. The motivation of the gift of giving, listen to this, it is to further and enhance the ministry of an individual church by sharing personal assets with that ministry. Listen to this, never is it giving to be recognized. Okay? So a lot of times, you see on these different trust funds or whatever, oh, so-and-so, he's given, $10,000 here, and there's his name on that plate, and, this person does a lot of giving, but it's always very, high-profile giving. That's not necessarily the gift of giving. It is typically done in private because it's not giving to be recognized, but it's giving with a genuine motivation that the cause of the gospel will go forward. All right? Now, I want you to look at Romans chapter 12, verse number 13. I love that he says these two different words here, and write this down and know this. In Romans chapter 12, verse number 13, he says, distributing to the necessity of saints. Now, we talked about this one time before. Saints are people who are sanctified. They are people who are set apart, and we would say they are people who are saved. So when he talks about people who have the gift of giving, he says that the first thing the givers will do is they will give to the necessity of the saints. That has to do with this body here, the people who are here, the needs that are here, saved people. But look at the next word. Then he says, given to hospitality. Hospitality brings about with it a whole different picture. Hospitality is not about people who are within. Hospitality is about people who are without. So those are strangers. I just want to make this notation here. People who have the gift of giving and true givers, they don't just give to people who they know, people who are within the group, but they also have a biblical obligation from Romans chapter 12, a biblical obligation to be marked by hospitality, which means you would give to people on the outside as well. And I don't know about you, but you got to have a little bit of that exhortation coming in, or a little bit of that mercy coming in, where you don't judge people who are on the outside. Well, if they wanted to do better, they'd turn themselves around, they'd get a job, and they could come here with us. You got to have an absence of that kind of attitude and just be marked by hospitality. So that's what Romans chapter 12, verse number 13 tells us. Look at this last definition, and then we'll jump into the characteristics. Darrell Robinson, whoever that is, defined giving as this right here: the God-given ability to earn money and give generously. Now these next three words are super, super key. Beyond the tithe Okay? I'm going to read this again because it is super important. The worst thing that could happen is somebody to go out of here this morning and say, yeah, I don't pay tithes or anything. I don't put anything in the offering because I don't have the gift of giving. Clearly, I don't have the gift of giving. So the people who have the gift of giving, yeah, they're the ones who take care of the finances of the church. Wrong. Okay? So let me say this again. The God-given ability to earn money and give generously beyond the tithe to the right things at the right times to support God's work. So let me just throw in one little tidbit of information about the tithe.
Will you read that one more time?
Absolutely. It is the God-given ability to earn money and give generously. And a lot of times people think, God gives you the ability to earn money. Listen, honey, if you ain't got money, how you going to give money? I mean, really, you know what I'm saying? People who have the gift of giving, they've got to have some kind of way to actually make money. And usually they make really wise investments. They just have this knack for getting in on good deals and making money. And to earn money and give generously beyond the tithe to the right things at the right times to support God's work. And I'll say it even one more time, just so y'all get it, okay? The God-given ability to earn money and give generously beyond the tithe to the right things, key there, at the right times, key, to support God's work. Okay? So that's our definition of the gift of giving. Now, I want us to talk about this morning 8 characteristics of someone who has the gift of giving. And here is the first characteristic. Number 1, the ability to discern and make wise investments. I'm going to say again, you can say, hey, I got the money. I mean, I got the gift of giving. I mean, if I had money, I'd give it. I mean, but that's not good, okay? If you're going to have the gift of giving, you got to be able to give money. Well, it makes sense to know you got to have money to be able to give money. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to be wealthy, by no means, and that's going to come up in a little while. It doesn't mean that you're just rolling in the dough, just throwing ones up in the air, jumping in piles of coins like on DuckTales, It doesn't mean that at all, but you got to think, my goodness, if you're going to give money, you got to have money. And the first characteristic about the person with the gift of giving is they have the ability to discern and make wise investments. They're usually good money managers. They're well organized and they're private. Okay? So it just makes sense that a person who God has given the ability to give and the gift of giving, well, they manage their finances well. And they make good investments so that they do have money to give. And that makes perfect sense. That's the first characteristic. The second, the need for reassurance that his decisions are in accordance with God's will. This person has a need for reassurance that all decisions are in accordance with God's will. Here's what's true about a person with a gift of giving. The lordship of Christ is especially important to them. Now you say, what are you talking about? Shouldn't the lordship of Christ be important to everybody? Oh, it should, most certainly. But the person who has the gift of giving probably prays about their house before they buy it. They probably pray about their cars before they buy it. They probably pray about all their financial decisions that they make before they make them, because they want to make sure that the Lord's ordering everything that they do, because, and here's another truth, they don't respond well to high-pressure, quick appeals. They're not going to give just because somebody's standing there peddling, hey, give it, give it, give it, give it, give it. They are going to be a slow, thinking person who says, I want to know, before I make this decision, if this is what God wants, if this is what God wants or not. And that is very characteristic, very true to a person with the gift of giving. So the need for reassurance that all their decisions are in accordance with God's will. Here's the third characteristic. I like this one. This is part of the problem with America. The third characteristic of somebody who has the gift of giving is they are frugal. This is the third one. They are frugal and content. They are frugal and content. Now, what does frugal mean? It doesn't mean that they're just a nickel and dime and cheapskate, Mr. Krabs, I mean, he can't even pay a compliment because he's so cheap, right? Ha ha ha. Kids would think that was funny, okay? He's so cheap he can't even pay attention. Oh, come on. Y'all are terrible. Whatever. I don't even care, okay? They're frugal. And it just means that they think like this. Well, if I give this money to go there, that means that later on I might not have the money to give to them or to go there myself, or I'm not going to be able to help in this way. And it's just being frugal. It doesn't mean you're a penny pincher, you're a cheapskate, all those different miserly little negative condescending terms, but they're just frugal. They think about how they spend their money. Well, once again, they've got to be that way, because if you want to be able to give money, and let me tell you something, it is way, way, way more blessed to give than to receive. We've got it so backward. Oh, and when we say, hey, whatever you want to have, you need to give it away. You want more money, give more money away. Not in a crazy, wild kind of sense, but man, the blessings that will come back to you when you can get over yourself and give to other people who are in more need than you are. So these people are frugal, and I love this second word, they're content. They're content, because here's the truth. If a person with the gift of giving doesn't learn to become content with where they are, they're always going to take every bit of raise, increase to income, and it's going to always just put them in a higher bracket. I sat and I heard Johnny Hunt say that he and his wife decided years ago at a certain point we'll never live on any more money than this right here. And they said they capped their own life. I don't care if he's a quadruple millionaire. That's got some weight to it for me, because I don't care if you are a multimillionaire. You're always going to be tempted to live like a five-time millionaire. It is the draw, the desire of the human heart that wherever you are, you want to be one step higher. But the person with the gift of giving says, you know what? I got to learn to be content. I'm going to be content right here. I don't need a bigger house, because a bigger house means a bigger payment. And a bigger payment means less left in my account to give to other people. Now, I'm going to be honest, to some of us, this seems so foreign. It seems so foreign, like the thought about limiting ourselves so that we could give to others. But I'm telling you, I don't mean to be partial, but I almost feel like this is the gift that comes with the most blessing attached to it. It is the person who learns to be frugal and content. Listen to this. I love these little tidbits of information that kind of goes with that. Not only do they want to save money, but they also want to get the best buy. You know, it makes me nervous to go into a store with people who don't want to shop around. Hey, I kind of like that right there. Here, I'm going to get it. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Have you looked it up on Amazon yet? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You might be able to get that used on eBay. I mean, gently used. Come on now. I mean, have you even price shopped this thing around now? And it makes me nervous, but I like that truth about people who have the gift of giving. They always want to get the best buy. Why? Because in their mind, less money spent on me is more money left in my account to be able to spend towards other things, other people who have needs. I like this. They tend to buy quality gifts that will last because they are motivated by value. Hey, that's interesting. So somebody that says, you know, I know it may seem a little bit expensive for this gift right here. I mean, I hope there's some of y'all in here, because I mean, you know, this is a good thing right here. And they say, but this is going to last you forever. I mean, might have had to pay a little bit more up front, but hey, this is going to last you forever, because they are motivated by value. And listen to this truth. They are content with the things that they have, and they are willing to sacrifice to meet the needs of others. Now, for some of you in here who might have this gift, you might inwardly nod your head thinking, oh yeah, I've definitely done that. I've sacrificed things that I wanted to free up myself to be able to give to someone else or to some other cause or to some other need. But you know what? It was worth it. And then to some of us, we're thinking, what the heck, man? That is the most foreign concept. But I want you to turn to Philippians chapter 4. We're so familiar with this verse. And you know, I told you, Tina's teaching these gifts to the middle and high school girls, and so we studied together. After we've made the outlines, we studied together on this, and I thought it was so interesting. Tina said yesterday, and this is not a bad thing, but she said, why is verse 13 included in here? Because I said, let's read Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 through 13. Well, we know Philippians 4:13. It says, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. She said, why do we need to put that in there with it? I said, because we have so misused that verse. We need to teach these girls, and I need to teach these women, that verse is not about softball games. It's not about baseball games. It's not about hitting home runs, and it's not about winning beauty pageants. I can do all things through Christ has a context context that comes behind it. And for once, let's put it together in the proper context, okay? It's not when I stand up under the, the bright lights of the ball field and I got Philippians 4:13 on my eye black, hoping that means I'm going to hit a home run. That has nothing to do with Philippians 4:13. So let's look at Philippians 4:11. Paul said, that's verse 10. Verse number 11, not that I speak in respect of want. He said, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. I know how to be abased. That means brought low. And I know how to abound. I know how to be high. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. And then he says, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me is really the verse that we should write in our checkbook register at the top. Hey, when the numbers look low, I can still do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When we're not eating out and we have to open those old pantry doors, and cook something out of the cabinets for once. Philippians 4:13 might ought to be posted there. Hey, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. I can eat high on the hog, as they say, and I can have the beans and the rice or potatoes or whatever. I've learned I can do it when the finances are good and the situations are right, and I can do it when they're a little reversed too. That's the true context of that verse. And nobody knows that verse more and understands that concept more than a person who has the gift of giving, who says, I've learned to be content. I don't want the bigger house. I don't want the nicer car. I don't want this. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there because, and not to get too super spiritual, but it warrants getting super spiritual because things that are temporary, they're just that. They are temporary. And you're going to die one day, okay? You're going to die one day, and somebody else is going to live in your house and play with all your stuff. I mean, honestly. And it's not the one who dies with the most toys wins. That's not the truth. It's the one who gets to heaven and has a crown there. You know what I'm saying? Who has sent ahead things that are of eternal value. You paid into things that mattered, not temporary things. So we got to learn to be content. Here's the fourth characteristic. Somebody with the gift of giving has the ability to see needs that others never see, or needs that are not obvious. It's not unusual for a giver to be prompted by the Lord. See, I don't know if you've ever done it or if you've ever received it, but you ever had anybody shake your hand and inside your hand was left some type of money or some type of check, and they say, the Lord told me to give that to you. And I've been able to be on the other end where I said, Lord, I'm going to look crazy. I mean, it insults people sometimes to give them money, but the Lord says, no, write the check, fold it up, give it to them. It's what I want you to do. And that is characteristic of somebody with the gift of giving. They are prompted by the Lord to do that, and they get great joy to find out that that gift was an answer to prayer. When they don't look crazy afterwards, but somebody says, man, I've been praying. The Lord knew that I needed that. That brings them great joy because they are reaffirmed. Man, Lord, you did give me this gift, and you're showing me step by step when and how to use it for your good, for my good and your glory. That's the fourth characteristic. The fifth characteristic, they give only to effective ministries, which will be revealed to the giver by God. Now I want you to look at that word, effective ministries. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and I guess I'll do it without mentioning anything too specific. There are some organizations that you are absolutely wasting every one red cent that you send to them. Okay? I won't name any names. But let me tell you something. You don't think the pharmaceutical company has realized that there are certain illnesses that are just quadrillion, whatever industries? There's not going to be a cure. I mean, I'm sorry, I hate to, and I can just feel the pins coming in the stairs. I mean, because I know a lot of y'all are in the medical field, and let them cure it and put all these places out of business. That's my personal, that's not Bible, it's not Bible, and you can trash it. There's not going to be a cure. Boy, that's a I don't even know the word, industry. So I have trouble pouring. And look at the amount. I just want to say, honey, if you ain't found it yet, Lord of mercy, you don't need money, you need brains. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know. Maybe y'all just should start praying, Lord, you send us the person who's got the cure or whatever, because money isn't getting you any closer. I'm just saying. I have a real hard time. I'll give to a lot of things, but there's some things I'm just not going to give to. And you might just want to look up. Now, don't get on the Goodwill. Listen to me. I know that the CEO of Goodwill makes good money. Okay, I'm aware of that. But you know what? I also am getting clothes for $5 a piece, okay? So I don't care. And I've heard people say, man, you going in that Goodwill, you ever seen what the CEO makes? Well, listen, I'm getting something out of that. I don't just write random checks and just send it up there. But listen, it would do you good to just look into some of these organizations and see how much money's given. And listen, I heard one of the best statements about humanitarian efforts and things like that. When we were at that mission conference, this guy said, do Christians care about suffering? Yes. Do we care about the AIDS epidemic? Yes. Do we care about people with unclean water? Yes. Do we care about sexual slavery and different things like that? He said, yes. But what Christians care most about is eternal suffering. And I thought, whoa, that nails it right there. Send to all the humanitarian efforts you want to, but what we ought to care most about is the salvation of people. You know what I'm saying? We care the most about eternal suffering. Yes, we care about human suffering, but we mostly care about eternal suffering. So that's enough about that. They have the ability, or they have a desire to give to effective ministries. All right, here's the sixth truth. They give to motivate others to give. You know, I remember one time when a church that I knew of was raising money for a camp. They were building like what they called, I guess, a brush arbor or something like that. And this guy in the church said, I'll match whatever anybody gives up to $50,000. He said he would match it. So you knew that if you were given $500, he was given $500. So that just became $1,000. And he knew that if you could raise $1,000 here, then he was going to give $1,000. And that's something that somebody with the gift of giving might do. A lot of times they give to motivate others to give. And they'll do a matching gift basis kind of thing sometimes. Here's the seventh truth. They often have the desire to give secretly. They often have the desire to give secretly. Turn to Matthew chapter 6. Because here's what they know. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4 says this right here. Take heed, means be warned, that you do not your alms before men. Now what are alms? Just good things. Whether you're giving somebody something, you're doing something for somebody, you're doing some act of service. He said, and this is in red, Jesus said, take heed that you do not your alms before men to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no reward of your Father who is in heaven. So he says, basically, you got to decide. Do you want to do it in front of everybody so they see what you do? Or do you want God in heaven to honor your giving or your good deed? Because you only get one or the other. Verse number 2. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms or your good deeds, do not sound a trumpet before thee as the hypocrites in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Truly I say unto you, they have their reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, for that your alms may be in secret, and that your Father which sees in secret himself shall reward you openly. And this is where social media has wrecked us all. I can't stand to see somebody give something and then go post it all over social media. I'm like, wow, good job, honey. Seriously. I hope you like that little blue thumbs up, because that's all you're getting. Because, I literally feel like Jesus made it clear right here that he logs into Facebook, okay? Because he's got to, right? Because if it says, like and share, for Jesus to give you a blessing, he's got to keep up with that kind of stuff, right? Or if you scroll on by, go to hell. If you scroll on by, you go to hell. So the Lord's got to log in and, check the record of all that stuff. And then he's got to pull up the mighty email account, because if you haven't forwarded it to 5 people, he can't give the blessing, Please don't ever send me one of those, because you're going to get a tongue lashing and a half, man. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Jesus literally said right here, he said, well, you just decide. If you're going to make your giving public before all them, then you got your praise and applause you wanted. But when you do it in secret, then I'll see it in secret, and I will reward you openly. Now, the person with the gift of giving has an understanding of that. And because they're smart, they say, you know what? I want my giving to be done in private. And then here's the 8th characteristic. They have a concern over the effect that their giving will have. A concern over the effect that their giving will have. This person with a gift, they avoid giving that's going to make the recipient dependent or slothful. See, they think stuff like that through. There's a book I've got, and it's a great book. It's called When Helping Hurts. And it talks about how a lot of times, especially Americans, we want to go to other countries and we want to just be like Superman. We want to fly in with capes and we want to say, hey, here, let us build you a building. Let's give you this. Let's give you this. And when we leave, just with our capes flapping in the wind, I'm sorry, that's just how I feel about that, but with our capes just flapping in the wind as we depart out of here on our great giant bird, we'll leave a few $1,000s just for y'all. And boy, the author of that book nailed it. He said, well, number one, you just threw off their entire economy. You know what I mean? You just gave a man who washes shoes, you just gave him a year's salary in one handing there. And he's going to go then and buy, and it's going to mess up the whole place. And so this book, When Helping Hurts, kind of gives a good perspective on that. Well, listen, the person with the gift of giving, they ain't trying to just take somebody under their wing to raise them. You know what I'm saying? They're not trying to make somebody lazy. They're not trying to make somebody dependent on them. So that's why everything kind of goes hand in hand. They want the Lord to show them how to give and when. And listen to me, He will. He will. And he'll draw the line and say, okay, you're done. And I told somebody one time, I said, when the giving's not joyful anymore, that's a hint that it's done. There's times when you can give and you can give joyfully, and the Bible says the Lord loves a joyful giver, a cheerful giver. But then when you get bitter about it and you're like, wait a second, this person's taking advantage of me. Well, if you've lost your joy in your giving, then that's a symbol, that's a sign that it's done. It's done. And the Lord will show you that. And the person with this gift doesn't want to make people dependent or slothful. All right, let's go on very quickly and talk about 7 misunderstandings of the gift. Misunderstandings of the gift and misuses of the gift. This first one, it kind of hurts my heart a little bit, but it's true. It said the person may appear to be materialistic or showy or impressive to others. I just think we ought to be careful before we say that. If you see somebody who gives somebody something, don't be so quick to say, oh, they're just trying to be showy. Oh, they just think money can buy people, don't they? That's a misunderstanding, okay? You got to understand people's motives. A lot of times people who have this gift, they're just trying to be led by the Lord. And so they may appear to be materialistic or showy or impressive to others. Listen, not always are those who give wealthy. They may not be trying to be showy. They might not even be wealthy themselves. But here's the truth. They're usually in good shape financially. But let me tell you something. Good shape financially just means you're not drowning in debt. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're wealthy. You know what I mean? So we need to be careful not to misunderstand this gift like, oh, look at them trying to be so showy. Oh, just going to give a big gift like that. Not necessarily. The second one. They may be accused of attempting to control people with money. Now here's the bad part about that. Some people do try this. I wasn't a member of I know of a church one time, and you might ask to use something like you might say, hey, so-and-so wanted, I don't know, whatever. Oh, that belongs to so-and-so. He bought that. The playground, for instance, was bought by an individual. So you had to be kind of careful. You kind of had to run it through him. Hey, is it okay if our kids come out here? Maybe on Saturday we're going to bring them up here. Because everybody was real quick to tell, oh, so-and-so paid for the playground. Well, guess what? The sound equipment in the church, it wasn't the church's. It belonged to an individual. I'm just telling you. And boy, what a sticky little spider web you had to always crawl through because, oh, is this his too? Oh, he bought these cups too, didn't he, probably? Let me only get one. I mean, and you got to really be careful. There's a fine line there. Yeah, maybe somebody's trying to be generous, and then maybe they're trying to control people with their gifts. But here's the truth, and you need to know this about your own giving. Giving has to be done with no strings attached. Let me tell you what I don't want. I don't want a gift that, now if you decide to get rid of that, I want it back, okay? Oh, goodness, I just don't want it. I don't want it, okay? And I don't want a gift that somebody's going to come and monitor how I'm using that gift. And we need to know that about giving. Listen, when you give, you gave, you release. It's theirs. And if they turn around and they sell it, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Hey, it happens, okay? It happens. We've gotten into that. We've gotten into that at school. I said, man, this kid right here needs shoes. And the person says, we've bought them 7 pair and the mom sells them on Facebook. Well, forget it, okay? Maybe we don't need to keep buying shoes. I mean, you can always get into that kind of stuff. But the thing is, you got to give it with no strings attached. Here's the third thing. You may neglect your family in your giving. That's not good. You don't need to be giving money to other people and then, I'm sorry, hon, we're going to have to get our heat cut off this month because we gave everything to... Now that's a little bit of an imbalance with this gift. Don't get too give happy now, okay? Take care of your own family. And that's come up before, though, remember? It came up with the gift of prophecy. It came up with the gift of service. That you would give too much to others and neglect your own family. Watch that. All right? The fourth misuse or misunderstanding. There's a danger of measuring spirituality by assets. Because the person who has the gift of giving, they like to give and they give sometimes tangible, they give money and they give tangible things. If you're not careful, then you measure spirituality by assets. Like, well, if they were living right with the Lord, then they would have more. Well, they would be doing better financially if they were, but you can't make those two connect. You can't say spirituality can be based on how much a person has. That's not correct, okay? So that's a misuse. Number 5. Oh, I found this one so interesting. This has come up in every gift except service. Guess what it is? This is a misuse that has come up in every single gift, and we talked about it. Except service. Pride. Pride. Surprise, surprise. You may become proud of your generosity. That has come up in everyone. They said the prophets become too proud. The teachers become too proud. The exhorters become too proud. The givers can become too proud. Everybody but the servers who are scrubbing, toilets become too proud in their office. You know why? It's the tendency of the human heart to want to be prideful about something. To want to think that what you're given was actually something that you had, when in truth it was really something given to you from the Lord. So they may become too proud, and you got to watch for that. Here's the sixth one. Pride may be apparent when testifying. Now I thought, that's a little pointed and specific. A lot of times people will stand up and testify about maybe a goal being met, or hey, we were able to get this much money to go here to complete this, or we were able to do that. And pride might be apparent there, but here's the deal. They usually just want to share the victories. They're usually just wanting to help others rejoice with them. You just got to be careful when it deals with things with money. Because people always want to say, they want to be real quick to say, oh boy, they're real showy about that, aren't they? Oh, they're real happy. They got all that money for that, aren't they? Well, it ain't all about money. You know how people can tend to get, right? Y'all have been that way before, hadn't you? Yeah, y'all have. Anyway, so when they give a testimony of a goal being met or something being done, it's not a showy thing, it's just a rejoicing thing. And here's the last one. I like this. It seems so opposite, so contradicting. If pressured, they may appear stingy. If pressured, they may appear stingy. About the worst thing for somebody who has the gift of giving for anybody to find out is that you've got the gift of giving. You know what I mean? Because then you get pressured, like, oh, who's got all the money? She's got the gift of giving. Get her. Hey, she gives. And when those people get pressured, you know what happens to their money? It just gets held on to even tighter. But listen, that makes perfect sense. Because you don't listen. My dad said this one time. Rich people get rich because they live like they're poor. Poor people are poor because they live like they're rich. And people don't have money to give just because they just constantly just pouring it out. So what seemed to me at first glance to be like an oxymoron, I thought that didn't make sense. The giver's stingy, they appear to be. Why? Because they want to make sure, Lord, I'll give this money and you know that. Lord, if you want me to give it, I'll give it. But I want to know it's you. I don't want people pressuring me into just having, open pockets. So if you pressure them, they might appear stingy. Let's talk about a couple things. To the person with the gift of giving, you should study the Gospel of Matthew. Because you know who Matthew was? He was a tax collector by trade, and he left everything to follow Jesus. He knew about taking, but he also knew about giving too. And Matthew is a good gospel to look into. Turn with me to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. I alluded to this text earlier, but I want to read it because it's just so good. 2 Corinthians chapter 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, looking at verses 6 through 8. I love this because, man, it's the truth. He said, "But this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap sparingly." Paul's writing this. He said, "And he that sows bountifully shall reap also bountifully." Verse 7, "Every man according as he purposes in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly, not out of necessity. For God loves a cheerful giver." Verse number 8, "And God is able to make all grace abound towards you, that you, having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work." I just love that first part up there. I love it all. It's all good. But that first part where he says, "He that sows a little is going to reap a little." Think about planting a garden. You plant a little bit, you'll reap a little bit. He said, but man, you pour a lot out there and you'll reap a lot back in. Now I know that I've made this distinction about giving, which is beyond the tithe, but I'm going to tell this story about tithing. When I was young, I'm blessed. I'm so thankful for the heritage that my parents gave me as they taught me biblical principles. I told you, man, I couldn't make $2 at a yard sale without my mama saying 20 cents goes in the offering plate Sunday. And I'm like, seriously? Well, give me 10 dimes then, golly. And it wasn't always easy to do that, but I'm telling you, from the time I could remember when coins weren't a choking hazard anymore, if I had coins in my hand, I knew that 10% of those went in the plate. Well, when I had my first income, and I guess that would be Zaxby's, for about 6 months I worked at Zaxby's before I started college. I asked my dad, I said, Daddy, there's a gross and there's a net. And gross is a big number. You don't see nowhere near that gross. I'm just telling you this is a story. This doesn't mean anything for y'all. And I said, when you tithe, do you tithe on the net or do you tithe on the gross? He said, whichever one you want to be blessed on. I said, so when you tithe, Daddy, do you tithe on the net or do you tithe on the gross? He said, just whichever one you want to be blessed on. I said, well, Daddy, when you tithe, I'm trying to just give me the answer, okay? And he said, I said, when you tithe, do you tithe on the net or do you tithe on the gross? He said, well, guess which one I want to be blessed on? And I've always tithed on the gross. And I've never lacked. And the Lord has blessed me on the gross. The Lord has blessed me on the gross. It's a biblical principle. It's a biblical principle. There's so many of these paradoxes, we call them, in Christianity. You want to live? Die. You want to be first? Be last. You want to be a ruler? Be a servant. Aren't those what we would call paradoxes? They don't make any sense. What you want to have? Give it away. You want a lot? Keep a lot. No. You want a lot? Give away a lot. And it is a biblical principle. And I love how he throws in this verse 7. He says, every man according as he purposes in his heart. That means if I tithe on my gross and you tithe on your net, that's fine. It says, however you purpose it in your heart. It says, let him give, not grudgingly, not out of necessity, just whatever you decide in your heart. But it is a righteous biblical principle that if you sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. And if you sow bountifully, you reap bountifully. And I'm telling you, I am not the richest person in Cedartown, but the Lord has blessed me on the gross. I'll just tell you that. So I love those texts about the giving. Listen to this. Tom Rush said this, God's plan for giving is supernatural. It's not explainable in human terms. And I believe that is so true. I love what Blake said. You know, I've never even thought about it like that. He said that Christians have a disadvantage from the get-go. He said this, and remind me to tell you about Chick-fil-A. He said this. He said, the whole world's going to live on 100%, and the Christian's going to live off of 90%. You're at a disadvantage from the beginning. But boy, the Christian life is the blessed life. I mean, you know, I remember in 2009, when the economy tanked and we were in the middle of that terrible recession. You know how I remember it so much? That's when it all began. You know how I remembered it? I graduated college in 2009. And how easy is it to go put in applications to teach places when they're cutting people? I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, I want a job. Well, we just fired 3 people. You know, we had the RIF come a little after that. I had a block of about 90 people who graduated. I think 8 of us got jobs. Let me tell you what I told people who asked me, how'd you get a job in 2009? I said, I had begun praying long before 2009. I said, I started praying when I began that degree, that when I finished, the Lord would give me the place to serve with that degree. But I remember it was right along 2009 when there was a commercial that had Truett Cathy on it. And they were in the height of their income. They were making more money than the company had ever seen before. With several things going on. Number one, it was 2009 or 2010. I can see the commercial in my head. I can see Truett Cathy standing there, and I can see the TV up in my parents' house in that corner right up there. And I remember looking at the TV, and it was a commercial about how good Chick-fil-A was doing. Number one, it was 2009. Number two, U.S. was in a recession. And number three, they're only open 6 days a week. And I'm not trying to bring Chick-fil-A into this, but let me tell you something. God's plan for giving is supernatural. The way God thinks about money is supernatural. And if you don't believe it, look at Chick-fil-A. That company's rolling in the dough, and they're open only 6 days a week, not the 7th day. You can work less, make more. Sounds like Jesus to me. I mean, it really does. That's one of those Christian paradoxes. And here's the last truth I want to say. We talked about how Jesus demonstrated all the gifts, and I'm going to be honest with you, when I was studying in this one, I thought, well, this is going to be interesting, Tom Rush. Show me how Jesus Christ gave anything away. That shows how slow I am. I thought he didn't even have anything. He borrowed the donkey, he borrowed the tomb, he borrowed this, he had no place to lay his head. I mean, he was borrowing everything. Show me what he gave away. And here's what Tom Rush said that was very moving to me. He said, Jesus Christ was the greatest giver who ever lived. He gave everything, including his very life, leaving the glory of heaven and coming to die for us and provide us with the greatest treasure of all, eternal life through a relationship with him. I'm so shallow. I'm always thinking giving's about things. I thought, what did Jesus ever give? Man, he gave his very life for us. Yeah, he was a giver. Let me tell you something else. We said they have to make sacrifices. You say, well, Jesus didn't make any sacrifices. He most certainly did. He gave up a lot. Number one, he gave up a position seated by the Father in heaven, his rightful place to come here. He gave up pride, to be spit on, to be mocked. They said, oh, if you're the king, had this little stick in his hand. If you're the king, then come down. Hold your mighty scepter. You got your crown, it's thorns. All of that. He gave up that pride to be able to be a sacrifice for us. You know what else he gave up? See, the Bible says that when he was in trials and suffering, he always looked forward to the cross. You know why Jesus wouldn't sin? He was looking forward to the cross. He knew that he could not do anything that would make him anything less than 100% perfect. He gave up everything. He literally gave everything for us. And here's the last quote, and I'll be finished. The one with the gift of giving has settled in their heart that all they have is a gift from God. And in a very real sense, it all belongs to him. We are stewards of God's money, and he has loaned it to us. All that we have, we received from him. And when we give all our things back to him, we experience a great freedom and will be on our way to learning the true joy of grace giving. So, giving is a gift.